But the question is this: how do we live that out in this place in this time? Knowing those ways are better. It's obvious when you look at places like the Middle East where it's illegal to be a Christian. You mean in secret places? Yeah. You just show up to church and you're persisting on the path. But for us here in McKinney, what does it mean to truly live this way? Because as you follow Jesus on this path, then you become the best version of yourself. That's better than any morning routine you become on with. Better than any influence or advice. When you follow Christ on that path, then you'll become the best version of yourself. So what does that look like? How do you do that? Here's the answer. You part with the past and you let go of the status quo. You part with the past and you let go of the status quo. We like to talk about the persecution in other places. We are inspired. I mean, how can you not be inspired by the stories of faith in the face of death? But that's not our situation here in America. We have religious freedom. Christianity is still the dominant religion. There's no one out there who's really going to try and actively stop us from doing this. So sometimes when pastors come to these passages in America, they will manufacture persecution as a way to apply this message. And I've done that in the past too. It's really easy to galvanize people and raise money when there's an enemy out there. And we do have an enemy. The world, the flesh, and the devil are our enemy. But the residents of McKinney, our neighbors and friends, they are not our enemies. They are our mission field. And for the most part here in Collin County, no one is actively trying to stop us. I mean, there are people that hate Christians in the city, and they would rather not see us here. They say there's too many churches, or those are hypocrites, whatever. But all the training that we've been traditionally receiving, myself included, to do evangelism and apologetics has taught all of us that every time you share your faith, it's going to be a hardened internet atheist on the other side of the table ready to argue with you about the cosmological arguments. That's not what people are like. And after a few years of doing this church planting thing and looking at good research from organizations like Barna, this is what we know. At worst, the average American is apathetic towards Christianity. They think it's a good thing you go to church, that's good for you, just not for me. But the situation we're actually in is we're living in the most spiritually open generation in American history. They are interested in your faith. They want to hear about your faith. They're open to a lot of other stuff too, but they want to hear about Jesus. And in fact, a lot of them wished we lived our faith more seriously. I'll give you an example. This past week, I got invited to an opioid misuse workshop through the sheriff's office. And so I walk into the room, I got my collar on, and I'm the only pastor in there. There's like police officers and DEA agents, and there's, substance abuse counselors, and our senator, Angela Paxton, was there. There's all these different people who are leaders in the community. And they talk about how there's a rising opioid crisis in Collin County. McKinney is the number 2 for opioid deaths in the county. And we went around at one point and we introduced ourselves. And I got to me, I was like, "Hi, I'm Seth. I'm a pastor of a new church in town, and I'm just here to find out how we can help." And guess what happened? They applauded me. They clapped for me. I'm the only person they clapped for. The senators there, they clapped for me. And afterwards, everyone's coming up to me saying, "Thank you so much for being here. We're so glad you're here. We cannot solve this problem without our churches. We need the churches." They were excited to see a Christian leader in the room, even though most of them weren't Christians. They're saying to themselves, "You Christians talk about loving your neighbors. You talk about faith, hope, and love, and peace, and being set free. Where are you? People are dying." And I was the only pastor that showed up at me. There was one other guy there for Prestonwood who was a lay leader to help with drug counseling in the church. But people out there, instead of being antagonistic towards the faith, are actually excited to see us help solve the problems and needs in our community. So the residents of the McKinney are not our enemies. We're not going to debate with you, they might, about the resurrection. For the most part, they want to hear what we have to say. And did you know that Barna found out that 82% of unchurched people would come to church if someone just asked them? 82%. All you got to do is ask, and they'll come. You go, "Well, where's everybody? Where are they?" Well, here's the thing. Here's the opposition. The research also shows only 2% of Christians invite anyone to church. 82% would come, but only 2% of us are actually inviting anyone to church. Now, the devil does not need bombs and guns to destroy the Anglican church. We're doing it all by ourselves. See, as I've reflected on this passage, and I've been looking at this data and looking at our community and trying to get an application to you who are here in this room, I thought long and hard, and this is the conclusion I came to. The opposition is actually coming from within ourselves. I believe that inside each and every one of us is a little Pharisee in your heart ready to scold you, and you try to do things to do that. When we think of Pharisees, we think like that old man in a suit being like, you don't smoke and drink. But a Pharisee is just anyone who's guarding the old ways and preventing you from following you on the new path. Did you know from a literary perspective that Jesus is not the main character of Mark's gospel? It is about him. The protagonists change throughout the story, and Jesus never changes. It's a biography about Jesus, but the protagonists are actually the disciples. And that's important because we tend to see ourselves in Jesus when we read the Gospels, when we're actually supposed to see ourselves as disciples. And fumble and bumble and get things wrong and are ignorant and make a lot of mistakes. That's you. That's who you are in the story. You're not Jesus. And throughout this whole passage, who are they fighting over? They're not fighting over Jesus. They're fighting over the disciples. Why are the disciples fasting? Why are the disciples doing that? Why won't the disciples? So the disciples are caught between the Pharisees, who they've followed and listened to their entire life, and this new rabbi is telling them to do things differently. They're caught between the old ways and the new ways of Jesus. And even today, we as disciples are caught, constantly being fought over by the old ways we used to do things and the new ways that Jesus wants us to do things now. That's where the struggle comes in. And so I can actually think that a lot of the resistance we feel is not coming from unbelievers. It's actually coming from other Christians. People, you might not share your faith because then you might get labeled other Christians, right? It'd be called extreme or pushy or, heaven forbid, an evangelical. Dun, dun, dun. But it's true. We guard each other because if we bring a bunch of unbelievers in, it's going to mess things up. I got friends here in a routine. This is my little space to come and think about God. If I start inviting people to this, it's going to change things. It's going to get messy and complicated. Maybe we don't invite our unsaved friends because we're worried that if we start involving religion in our relationships, they might hold us to a higher standard. And then we can't be incognito by our faith anymore. And we got to start walking the walk and not just talking the talk. What my Christian friends think of my unsaved friends? Are they going to get along? Is it going to be weird and awkward? We fear so much the psychic pain that we're going to cause ourselves and the other people that we forget that there's actual eternity on the line and that the gospel can set them free and make them the best version of themselves. Or maybe we're just afraid that we won't have answers to questions and we're going to look silly. We're going to be embarrassed and feel like a failure. Friends, there's nothing better to fail at it doing mission work for God. Was nothing better to fail at than doing mission work for God. As long as restaurants keep trying to open up in horrible locations in McKinney and inevitably close down, if they do it, why don't we do it? Why don't we risk bail? They'll do it for a restaurant. Let's do it for the keeping. The fact of the matter is, the devil, I'll say it again, does not need bombs and guns to destroy the American church. We're doing it ourselves because we end up being our own Pharisees. We're telling us, don't let Jesus mess this up. You've got a good thing going on here. You're building up your nest egg. You're building up your reputation. Jesus is going to try to hijack that and cause you to change your whole life. But if you never part with the past and let go of the status quo, you can never be the best version of yourself. You can never actually experience the kingdom life. Following Jesus in discipleship involves facing opposition boldly, persistently, without being deterred from God's calling. So I challenge you today to part with the past. Resolve in your heart that God will and can do better things if you think, ask, or imagine. That he wants to use you, and that you can trust him with your life. If we're willing To do all the hard things those influencers tell us on the internet so we can look better, feel better, make more money, and have better relationships. Whether it's dieting or getting up early or getting in a cold plunge for some reason. We're willing to do all those hard things for ourselves. Shouldn't we be at least willing to try to do the things that Christ is calling us to do? Because I've been out there. You've been out there. The city needs it. The city is asking for it. And the city is believed to see when it finally comes. For McKinney to be the best version of itself, God's will needs to be done in McKinney as it is in heaven. Because those ways are better. It's the only way it ultimately works. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.